All right, I feel pretty special. Anybody else coming down too? Or I'm by myself for a little bit.
We've met Diana and we've met Jordan. And so we're going to put you in the middle.
Me?
Yes.
All right.
You're going to be grilled from both sides.
Excellent.
Because it's blockchain and it's because it's community. But I want you, and we've met Jordan, we've met Diana, so we know who they are. Please start your story. Tell us a little bit more. The topic title is Genesis of Ripple.
So I was really early in Bitcoin. I built the first Bitcoin exchange in the United States, which was the second Bitcoin exchange on the planet. The first time Mt. Gox really dropped the ball was July 2011. So we were operating at the time, and we went from doing about 30% of the global volume, give or take, to 100% of it for all the Bitcoin transactions on the planet for a little while. It was a really weird time. We launched the same day that Chuck Schumer came out and said it's only good for money laundering, drugs, terrorism, and I think child porn. Same day I went to get a bank account, they Googled that, opened it for some reason. And so we blew up really fast. We didn't expect that. We had $1 million in the first couple of days. We're like, holy shit, we didn't. I really wasn't prepared for it. My background before that, I was in the Marine Corps, blowing shit up. And then I went to Afghanistan as a military contractor for a few years, took that money, and that's how I got started in Bitcoin. I didn't know what AML was. I didn't know what KYC was. I was on the phone with the bank, had $1 million in the account, and they said, what's your AML policy? I Googled AML. And I was like, fuck. And true story. And I just told them I'll have my lawyer get in touch with you. Then I had to get a lawyer. So it was a hell of a ride. Grew too fast, all that stuff. We acquired Bitcoin.com and some other things. It was interesting as hell. Where Ripple comes into play, I was living in San Francisco. I started in Chile, and then I moved to San Francisco, as you do when your tech company explodes. And I was friends with Arthur Brito, David Schwartz, and Jed McCaleb. David Schwartz was one of the first people I met in Bitcoin at a Google conference. Ran into him, and he looked like his avatar, and I said, are you David Schwartz? And he said, are you Jered Kenna? And I said I was impressed with what he was doing. He said, man, you're where the rubber meets the road. He's like, you have to deal with these banks. He's like, you're the one that's doing all the hard work. And I thought he was joking, and he was an incredibly smart guy, and he was definitely right. So anyways, I knew those three guys, and they were working on something that was to become Ripple. And then I happened to know Chris Larson, who founded Prosper. And this is gonna be funny. I had just managed to get a hold of a 41-bedroom crack house in San Francisco. And I mean, it was a disaster. I mean, I just got it. I was gonna renovate it, live in it with friends, and make it nice. And I mean, we were sweeping up hypodermic needles, it was bad. And Chris said, I want you to tell me what you think the future is after Bitcoin, and I'll swing by and we can have a chat. So I put it on my phone, and I was helping my friend Eric move, and I wasn't paying attention. And I didn't see the notification. I left Chris in the kitchen of an old crack house for maybe an hour. And I said, oh shit, and I helped so if I ever say I'm gonna help you move, I'm legit, I'll do it. And I got back, and his Porsche was parked outside and still had all the windows in it. And I went inside, and he was just sitting in the kitchen. I'm like, man, you're still here. So we went up on the roof, which was the only place that wasn't really, really dirty. And I pitched Chris on Ripple. And sounds funny. And Chris was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And then I called up Jed, and I said, hey, I pitched Jed on Chris. So that Jed and I went over to Chris's house. And basically, that's how Ripple, pretty much got started. And I provided some feedback and whatnot, but really what I did was connect those guys and kind of pitch them on each other. I kind of think of myself as like the Buzz Osborne of crypto, and that name probably, anybody? Anybody know who Buzz Osborne? This guy does. I know you do. Buzz Osborne is one of my favorite musicians. He's the front man of the Melvins, guitarist, vocalist, band you may have heard of, may not. He went to high school with a guy named Kurt and a guy named Chris. And he had a friend named Dave that was looking for a new band to join. And he introduced them together, and that became Nirvana. So we'll see in 10, 20, 50 years if people are talking about more about Nirvana or Ripple. But so yeah, that's the left out a few details here and there, but that's the. Sorry, I haven't been on stage in like 3 years. I've been hiding away. I'm a little nervous. It's weird.
Cobwebs out. You've got the cobwebs out.
Feeling good. Should have had a drink at lunch.
Round of applause for living legend.
Yeah.
For sure. And I'm going to turn it back to everyone here now, because I'm going to ask you all to do something. Could you stand up if you know about Ripple and XRP? Just stand up for me if you know about Ripple and XRP. Just so we know who's in the room. Okay. Sit down if you don't hold any Ripple shares or XRP. Okay. Don't. If you don't hold. Now turn to the person next to you and tell them you're not crazy. Okay? You're not crazy. You're not crazy.
What if they're sitting?
Oh, I know. Me too. Me too. We can all relax now. Cool. So we know who's in the room. We know who's in the room. With that being said, Jered, I have a question for you, because I don't want to make assumptions. XRP and or Ripple, were they always called XRP and Ripple?
So Ripple was originally, OpenCoin was the original concept, I believe. And then a guy named Ryan, last name starts with an F, I forget, owned Ripple Pay, which was not like a decentralized crypto or anything, but it was a payment concept. And then they ended up getting the domain Ripple and just calling it Ripple for short. And then a lot of people were calling XRP Ripples. And you can thank Chris for being incredibly adamant. And we hosted the first Bitcoin meetups and the first Ripple meetups and the first Ethereum meetups in my crack house. At this point, it wasn't a crack house; it was like a crack home. And and Chris was always, he was pitching to 30 people on, what Ripple was. And he was very adamant. These are not Ripples; they're called XRP.
And at that time, did Chris actually have a model for what he was going to do with XRP and Ripple?
I think there was a lot of uncertainty, and I think it changed. I think that might be more as it gets into your territory, because you were there, like I was there in the very beginning, and we were the first exchange to sell XRP. I think $1 got you about 1,000, and then give or take, and might have been 10,000. I forget where the zero was. A lot, and then you came around about when they were really trying to navigate that, didn't you?
Somewhat, yeah. I just want to officially thank you for putting Chris and Jered together, because with that really helped in terms of what we were looking for at that time, or Accenture, at least what I was looking for, was something that was legitimately something that had utility. And so with Ripple, what they had a couple of different paths of what they were thinking about, and what they ended up settling on was basically being a settlement for the banks. So if you're familiar with Swift, mostly familiar with Swift, right? And Swift is a very old messaging system and inefficient. And so they thought they could do this better, which they can. So the reason, from an Accenture perspective, we had all the top banks as clients, and Ripple was really good at going out to the banks and saying, hey, look at what we're doing, try this out, etc. And the banks pushed Accenture, and then I had an opportunity, because I was working with the banks as well, and to do that due diligence on the company. That was at 2015, 16, and I was telling Jered an interesting story. They were, this is a small company, and Swift is the gorilla, and Swift has an annual event called Sibos, and in 2016 it was held in Singapore, and so we had some of our people there as well, and all the crowds were at Ripple in Sibos. And so Swift was looking at this going, what the hell? The following year, they held their event in Toronto. And I was there, but they banned Ripple from being there. So Ripple, being entrepreneurial and smart, they created their own event called Swell. And Swell was set up almost next door to where Sibos was. And guess what? Guess who showed up at Swell and guess who didn't show up at Sibos? It was an interesting time. Watching them morph and figure out their model. But at the end of the day, and I think that's really where they're at right now. So as a settlement for the corresponding banking model.
Remarkable. And I mean, you've touched upon one challenge that Ripple faced. Over the 9 years of Ripple's very short but powerful history, what's the biggest challenge you've seen Ripple overcome? I'll come to you first.
Well, I think at the time that I was there, because I really spent a lot of time with them at that 15, 16, because we were working through the model with them, and like any startup, you've got all kinds of different issues that you're trying to figure out, although they've been around for a little bit, but they were trying to mature them, be more mature in their approach. And so that was, I think, one of the challenges that they were facing, is trying to get that nailed down correctly, and then to bring the banks along so that they can sort of understand how this could work for them. I think that, like anything else, I think earlier this morning, Linda talked about it, was about the people, getting the right people in place. And David Schwartz, who you knew, was one of the best cryptographers. I mean, we were really blown away by his capabilities. And that was good, but you needed other people. Chris was great. They brought on a COO, who I think is still there, but Brad Garlinghouse is now the CEO. So there was, that next generation of people, the next generation of management. And I think that's what they were trying to figure out, because this is all still new. And people, we're going to get people with blockchain experience. So that was, I think, one of the things that they had to work through.
So I'm a 39-year-old dinosaur when it comes to crypto. And you got to remember, back in the early days, it was hardcore nerds, anarchists, anti-government types, bad people,
Has that changed?
For the better, for the most part. The banks are more involved now, so it's actually probably worse. Yeah. I'm a pretty honest guy. And so back then we had a real problem winning over those types. They were big on the decentralization. They were big on we're not going to integrate with central banks, we're going to replace them, which is kind of pretty daunting challenge. And then Ripple comes along and decentralized, but there's a central corporation guiding everything. And I think I see it as a benefit. Someone spoke earlier about how, you can focus your energy and you're going in one direction and that kind of thing. So I see that as incredibly beneficial. They saw it as a detriment. Everything should be a consensus, or at least a majority decision by, so there was a lot of pushback from early hardcore Bitcoiners. That's so far in the past now that it's completely irrelevant. At the time, I think that was a pretty considerable challenge they handled pretty well.
The consensus model.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was consensus, but you still had this Ripple Inc. And people did not like that. And I think they're now over it. And I don't know how you would fight the SEC lawsuit as a decentralized currency either. So, I think they're kind of holding the torch for a lot of people still.
Yeah.
Most definitely. We won't be talking about the lawsuit. What we will be talking about is something really exciting, which is Ripple recently revamped their website. If you haven't seen, I encourage you to go take a look. And clearly now you can see the free products that they now offer: cross-border payments, CBDCs, and the liquidity hub. So in your opinions, what's the most exciting out of those free products and why? And Jered, I'll come to you.
You said the liquidity, the CBCD, what was the?
Cross-border payments, CBDCs, and the liquidity hub.
They're all incredibly important. I mean, I got into it for cross-border payments. I mean, I think it's excess of $500 billion a year, 9.5% average fee. It's pretty horrendous, and it impacts the poorest people the most. Guy comes up, makes $300, sends it back to his family in Ecuador, and Western Union takes $20 out of it. It's ridiculous. As far as everything else, I think the biggest impact would be the national currencies. I mean, if you're talking about a country backing something, as far as adding liquidity to XRP, which would come from that, if you have nation states potentially adopting and building on the Ripple platform, I mean, we don't even have to talk numbers. Everybody just knows that's so ridiculously huge. It's hard to imagine, and it kind of becomes a de facto global currency at that point if your XRP is acting as kind of a transfer medium. I don't see how that would do anything other than absolutely dwarf companies like Apple and just make it the biggest thing on the planet. You know, forget about Nirvana. You know, people be talking about Ripple. You know, so to me, that's the biggest for endgame for helping people out of cross-border payments. To me, personally, is pretty huge.
And if you don't mind me jumping in really quickly, I personally believe, and I'm glad I'm not crazy, that everyone will use Ripple technology, but very few will see it.
Right.
You know, we'll experience it, but we won't necessarily see it.
And that's
just like sending an email. You don't know what server is powering when you send your email. You care about is your email gets there. It's not Gmail. You know, Gmail have an underlying technology. The same. Mass adoption will come, they'll use it, but they won't see it, in my opinion.
I'm exactly the same, and part of this because I went through and worked with a few of the banks and worked with the Swift messaging, and man, was that ever that's a rat's nest. I mean, just trying to decipher all these charges that the banks were sending each other, and so that's why the cost that you're talking about, and it's ridiculous, is because it's such an inefficient old system, and being powered by these 11,000 banks. So, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, with Bitcoin, I mean, it allows anybody to be able to move, and you didn't have to move money or move value. And you know, I think that Chris Larson was right. It's the Internet of Value. That's what Ripple is really on about. And I think it's something that, you know, it's forcing that change. We should be able to do it. It's you know, it's just the will. And I think, unfortunately, for a lot of the banks, this money movement piece is a real cash cow. And so, you know, they're not obviously wanting to see that disintermediation. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with it being such a cash cow, and this was a community question, I'm an educator on XRP and Ripple, and part of the community asked, when will we see the full-scale rollout of the XRP ledger and XRP? So we all want to know when.
This is a conversation we have.
When. So what insights can you share with us?
I think it's, you know, this comes back to really, again, about the institutions, and it's going to be it's a tough one. I don't know if it's, you know, how long that will take, if it will actually take. And we've sort of talked a bit about what are the potential outcomes for Ripple. And, you know, is it, you know, will that be the new Swift, or will some bank come along and try to acquire the whole thing?
Two most likely scenarios, and either way, good for equity holders. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not excited about Chase buying it for 300 billion or whatever the number is, but it'd be a good return for anybody that's holding. I would prefer if it does become a dominant platform, basically, and I 100% agree, everything behind the scenes would be riding on it, and people would have no idea. Nobody knows what SMTP is and stuff like that when they send an email, and it doesn't matter. It matters to 0.01% of the population.
That's right, and many of which are sat in this room right now, that's for sure. Now, I've got 3 more questions. One of them were answered already. What's Linqto going to do for their investors when Ripple go public? And now we know how they're going to allow us to answer your concern, Jonathan, which is building that first decentralized private equity exchange. That was massive. It really was. So thank you for sharing.
I was trying to save that for Bill.
Now you see why he's annoyed at you, can't you?
I didn't want to avoid the question, because if I avoid the question, then you'll just grill me afterwards.
I can understand. I can understand that. So my final 2 questions are for anyone in the audience who doesn't feel like investing is for them. Right? I'm actually going to be the contrarian. I'm not going to make the assumption that everyone watching is an investor. And I'm not talking about investing in Ripple. I'm talking about investing full stop. What advice would you give to someone who's sitting on the fence about investing in general? Jered, I'll hand over to you.
In general? That's tough. I think the question really depends on your current net worth and where you're at in life. I mean, obviously a primary residence in the United States is an incredible way to leverage into a pretty safe asset. You know, that's something I always tell people that are earlier. If we're talking more accredited investors that are something like this, number 1 rule is always diversification, you know, among different companies and different industries and that kind of thing. I think Linqto can provide a pretty good way of doing that. You know, yeah, you're all in one platform, but if you're investing in different companies in different sectors, you know, don't put it all in high-risk crypto. Or actually, right now would probably be a great time because it's a little down. Put it all in high-risk crypto right now.
And that was financial advice.
Yeah. That was not financial advice. So, but do it. Put it all in Ripple. No, I'd bet on Ripple, but no, in general, diversify. If you're starting out, take advantage of a home, you know, or even a bigger home if you've got a good one. Tax benefits, etc.
So you said investing in what?
In general, anyone who's
anything.
not an investor,
It doesn't matter whether it's XRP, Linqto, whatever.
Correct.
I think it comes back to the point, and again, I think it was you, Karim, that said this, you know, it depends on the individual's motivation. What are they trying to do? What is it that they want out of their life? Yeah. And I mean, diversification for sure is a key thing. But I think it really comes down to that in order to determine how much, all of those things. It's very, very personal. But I do believe that, as spoken earlier today, that I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be able to figure that piece out and what it is that we want to do and be the one to be in control. There's more tools today for us to do that. So.
Definitely. And do I have a chance for my last question? Excellent. What question didn't I ask that I should have asked? Diane, I'll come to you.
Specifically with this topic,
Yeah.
is it that I would love to know from everybody else, like what they already know about Ripple, or is there any kind of negative connotation that they think about Ripple and XRP?
Oh, powerful. We'll definitely throw that to the audience in a moment. I like that. And what question didn't I ask that I should have asked you?
Oh, I think you did a pretty good job, to be honest. It was pretty, yeah. No, I don't really.
Or maybe I'll ask this. What would you like everyone to remember? If there was one thing, what would you like them to remember about Ripple?
I think the big point with Ripple is the focus. I mean, you have a decentralized currency that's driven by an excellent team. It started from the beginning, as you mentioned. David, phenomenal cryptographer. You know, Arthur and Jered were top notch back then. And then Chris. You know, the reason there wasn't a lot of options that I could have shown Chris at the time, just because he was so young.
Yeah.
But I only brought one project to Chris when he asked me what I think is the future. And, you know, so it's had a solid team from the beginning. Brad Garlinghouse is great. Everybody else involved. And that focus, you know, pushing it forward in one direction, I think is huge. And you don't see that in a lot of currencies. So instead in companies, but there's not any real alternative currencies, like Ethereum's kind of all over, et cetera.
This is true. A round of applause for our speakers.